Okay, so now let's talk about how we can do longer rips than we could manage with a crosscut setup. The dashboard tabletop has built in a series of slotted holes along both sides. Those slotted holes correspond to the guide rail and the spiral dogs. So what we've done here is I've got a couple track stars set up, one more application, and I've got the rip fence. Now the rip fence is the same as the F2 fence, just shorter. And so this is going to give us a reference for square when we're making rips. And I'm also set up a parallel guide corresponding with the flip stop so we can set our dimension. So what you're going to do is that we have the rail dogs installed in the rail, and I'll drop this here in the slotted hole at the front and at the back, and you can see those drop right down onto the surface. There's no setup required because those holes automatically position the guide so that the saw blade is off the edge of the table and it will not cut anything except the piece you're cutting. So now let's say I'm going to take my example piece that you saw in some of the other videos. Let's say I want to rip this. I've already set the dimension with the stops. Put this up against the fence, slide it against the stops, drop the spiral dogs in the slotted holes, and I'm ready to cut. So my offcut is supported by the track stars. It will not fall to the ground. Now, since we have multiple slotted holes, we can use multiple lengths of rail to cut multiple lengths of pieces. And repeat cuts are guaranteed, no problem at all. Okay, so we've talked about how you can do a long rip using the slotted holes milled into the tabletop for various lengths of pieces that are, let's say, shorter than the total length of the table. But what if we want to do something really long, up to 100 inches, let's say 25, 40 millimeters? Well, then we engage the long rip setup. And so the way to start with that is we're going to use these special long rip arrows. Again, you count in 3 holes from the edge, as we did in the other cuts. Arrange the arrows just as before. And now we're going to set up these 2 track stars on the end to work with our long guide rail, which you'll notice is conveniently supported by the door and panel supports out of the way, but I have quite good access to it. Another feature of the system. So we've arranged these 2 spiral dogs so that they will drop into these outer slots on the 2 track stars that are on the ends, and we simply drop those in place. The knobs holding these 2 track stars are a little bit loose, so I can slide them. Now I'm just going to take this rail and slide it right up against those arrows. Similar to what we did before with the crosscut set. Tighten the knobs. And we're all set. So we're nice and parallel to the grid of holes and square to the fence that we're going to set up here also. So let's take these out and take these out. And now we will put the rip fence in place. Now we're going to install the rip fence on these 2 track stars that are what we'll call the head end of the cut. So the rip fence is just the same as the F² fence, only shorter. So we have the same kind of hardware to connect it to the track stars, some spacers, and some bolts that will move in these slotted holes so we can adjust it depending on where we are. And so I am just going to pop these in to these holes on the track star, and remember I'm going to need to push it this way or pull it that way a little bit so that everything is even, because there is some slop built into the mechanism. There's no way to overcome that. So now I'm just going to come under here and drop a washer on and get this fastener. Leave it a little bit loose. Same thing over here, if I can avoid dropping the washers. And we'll start this one. So now, once again, I'm going to either push it or pull it towards me so it's even on both holes. Tighten the knobs. And that is good and solid. So we're ready to go. Now the way this works is, once again, I'll take my rail and drop it in corresponding slots on these track stars on the end of the tables. And so we're positioned so that the blade is off the edge of the table, but not cutting the track star. So we've got this separation here. Whether you're doing a beveled cut or a vertical cut, you're only cutting air and your workpiece, just like the other scenarios that we've shown already. So now let's get a part in here and set up to make a cut. So we want to set the dimension of the rip. And on this end, I've got the flip stop set and simply measure the dimension I want over to my cut strip. I've set this at 10 inches or approximately 255 millimeters. So then I can come back over here. On this end, I'm going to use the parallel guide and do the same thing. This, you can see this slides back and forth. And again, I've got 10 inches or roughly 255 millimeters ready to go. So this long piece will touch there and there. I don't want too many reference points. I could use a third one of these in the middle. If I had something that was narrower than this and it would be prone to flexing, I might want to use a third one. But in this case, I don't. So now we're ready to cut. Just set this on here, up against the stops, up against the fence on this end. So this piece is nicely arranged. And I can drop this rail right in the slots, as we talked about before. It's all set to go. And then all you're going to do is make your cut. And you just walk along here and everything's nice and under control. And there's my piece, 10 inches, 255 millimeters. So let's say we want to do something wider than this. What's the setup for that? Coming next. Now we're getting ready to cut a wider piece. So I've set the flip stop here to 25 inches, which is 635 approximately millimeters. And down here, since I don't have a benefit of the flip stop, I'm going to move a parallel guide onto a track star. So the way this works is choose the center hole, put one spiral dog into the hole, and then we're just going to slide this other one into the slot that corresponds with it. Just leave that there for a minute. And just as we did earlier, I'm just going to bring this in and look at my cut strip here and line that up with 25 inches or 635 millimeters. And then tighten this down. Just tighten both of these. And that's a solid stop. So now we're ready to make the wider cut. So we've made this cut. And this is a great opportunity to show you another benefit of the track stars. This offcut is about 9 11/16 or 272 millimeters. And if you watch real closely, I'm holding this with my thumb. If I let it go a little bit, it'll pivot because it wants to fall. This is pushing the maximum limit that the track stars will support. So with narrower offcuts, they won't fall. You don't have to worry about holding them. It's terrible when you have nice, expensive plywood dropping on the floor. So we're going to show you how to overcome this with the next piece of equipment and do really wide overhangs. Okay, so we have talked about the need to support wider offcuts. Let's say we want to cut to the center of a full sheet of plywood. Obviously, the track stars are insufficient for that. And really, you don't want to have to use roller stands out here. It's kind of messy, not really an integrated look. And that's where this comes in. This is called the outrigger. I've already got one installed here. And I'm just going to put this on this end. This slippy slides into the tracks just like all of our other products. And it has leveler feet so that you can adjust this to different kinds of terrain. I know the floor in here is a disaster, frankly. So we have a lot of adjustment that we need to make when we move things around. Now we have about 14 inches, approximately 355 millimeters of support for up to half a sheet if you're ripping to the center of a full sheet here. So it's not going to fall. And now we will just show how that sets up and how well it's supported and how easy it is to make a cut. All right, so we have our full-size sheet on the dashboard with our outriggers and track stars in the middle. So you can see we're very well supported here, 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 and here. And now let's go up top. So I've got, once again, the width set with this parallel guide, this flip stop. We're cutting to the center of this sheet. And let's get started. Now, you are watching the very first time this has been done using the outriggers. So I better not make any mistakes. So you just saw me make this cut, and it is all the way through. The board is totally controlled. This was at the limit of my reach. I'm not a very big person, but certainly be easier for people who are taller than I am. Anyway, this piece was no trouble, and I simply pull it away, walk away with it, start with my next cut. So that's the outrigger.